Before I got to the painting, I sketched out my dog, and that is all proportions you're going to measure to get things correctly placed. And if you don't have the measurements correct, no matter how realistic your painting job is, it's not going to look right. So I'll teach proportions in another video. It is pretty intense process, but like I said, if you put the time in, it really does pay off. Here we're putting some color on. This is your paint mixed with a lot of water. You can see how well it's moving on the canvas. So it's very watered down, but it's good because it's going to cover an area, a wider area, get some pigment in there. Then you're slowly going to work on top of this. And try some much more vibrant colors than what you actually see in your picture just to start with, because this is going to be layers and layers. Moving on to more color here. My paint is still fairly wet. You can see how well it's spreading. A little drier than the initial paint that we put down. And my brush here is actually old. It has separated bristles and it makes it much easier to create hair. Excuse my hand, it's in the way for some of this, but I think you can get the basic idea. I use my fingers a lot. You can use a rag too, but my fingers are right there, so I just use them. And what I'm doing is just smudging out color, blending it. Here we're concentrating on the eyes. And when you look at an eye, try to pull out all the colors that you see and try to go in different directions. So in the iris of the eye, you always have colors that burst around the pupil. So it's very much a sunburst technique. Or think of a flower. And also pay attention to all those highlighted areas, because the wetness of the eye is shown through reflection. So it's really important to make sure you have that white, that bright white at the end. So this is just more layers and layers. Take your time, work back and forth, both eyes. Again with the old brush here. And you can see I'm mixing a lot of colors together. This is very much a warm, light tan. So I have yellow in this. I'm using extremely light touch. and a little bit of paint, more of a dry brush technique it's called. So when your brush is mostly dry, not a lot of water, and more paint, that is a dry brush technique. Very, very light touch. I barely am touching this because I want the bristles to just hit, and I don't want every single one to have that same look, so it looks like real hair. When that's dry, you're actually going to make a wash. So I know it's real crazy because we just did dry brush technique, but then I make a wash. So a wash is mostly water with a little tint. And what happens is you can still see those underneath bristle strokes that you put on with a wash. So can you see that? I'm covering up that area that I just painted, but you can still see those highlighted pieces underneath. And that's really what gives it some dimension. It is lots of layers, but it's different kinds of techniques on each layer that really brings realism out. This part is very time consuming, but sometimes I just want to pull out one or two hairs. So I will use a smaller detailed brush and I will do that. I decided that I needed to add a little more lightness. I was comparing my picture, my photo, and I need a couple more lighter hairs in through here. Blending it out a little bit with my finger or a rag. It's close, but I just want to add a few more. Then I can go and use my brush. This is actually a dry brush, so I put on my color and then I brushed it out with a dry brush, and now I have a little bit of a wash again just in between there. So really just blending out that major lightness to the darkness and going over this just a little bit. Working in a bigger section here, this hair is much longer, so I'm pulling my strokes longer. And I have more paint on it this time. You can see how it's moving more smoothly across the canvas. It's not real dry. I'm just getting a whole bunch of light hairs in through here. Adding some more white to that color, that mixture. And then I'll go back through with washes again and with some darks to pull that out. So realism is layers and layers of paint, lots of time, definitely worth it. A finished portrait. I am going to zoom in so you can see different layers, different brush strokes. Some are short, some are long. I'm really bad at figuring out how much time it takes me to do something because I work on a couple different projects at once. In the eye, do you see the bright yellow and bright orange? Slide on over to this side. And the nose nose. My goal for realistic painting is to show different textures. So you have the texture of the fur and the inside of the ear, and then the eyes and the nose. They're all different textures, and the background as well.